The collection, supply and use of firewood and alternative energies in households is no longer a woman or children area. Even men have joined the sector. Do you know the type of energy used in your home could be the most devastating factor for the environment and biomass? Or is it the best alternative to save the forests? What kind of cooking fuel do you use and how do you obtain it? The challenge is enormous, with the depletion of biomass, such as forests, that offer firewood and charcoal, has led to higher risks of environment due to climate change impacts. Urbanization and changes in land use are causing severe stress on forests and woodlands as farms and settlements increase in rural areas, as well as high population increase in urban areas. New research by the East African Sustainability Watch, the Lake Victoria Climate Change Readiness Brief 1, shows that 90% of communities in East Africa depend on wood-based energy for cooking. This makes the region vulnerable to adverse effects of climate change because there is low adaptive capacity to climate change effects, lack of skills in disaster management. No wonder there are frequent and intense extreme weather events with serious socio-economic consequences.
Energy is one of the main challenges that East African community and Uganda especially is experiencing. Enormous challenges arising from energy is by mere fact that for a long time we have relied, or rather our communities have relied on biomass as the main source of energy supply for cooking and for even lighting. But things have changed. Because of the increasing population, there has been undue pressure on the supply of biomass as a source of energy. With the high rates of forest deforestation, this has put pressure on the existing natural resources as forests. And so there is need to reverse this trend, because as we realize there's already a global outcry. Climate change is now one of the calamities that is facing the world. And one of the real causes of climate change is the reducing, or rather deforestation, because as you know, forests act as sinks for absorbing carbon that in itself is a greenhouse gas that leads to climate change.
Compounded with lack of knowledge for alternative sources of fuel, especially cooking fuel, has maintained firewood and charcoal as the major sources in spite of new technologies that conserve fuel being available.
But you have to know how to handle the gas, so you have to cross the gas properly. But if you didn't cross the gas properly, it can burn your house, it can burn the kids. So you have to not to have crossed the gas properly. You see here. So you have to cross first, then check it properly. If you cross it properly, it can burn the house.
Forests and woodlands play a great part in regulating climate, curbing soil erosion, controlling flow of water and storing it, as well as regulating water flow into rivers and lakes. They also play a big role in providing fuel wood, building materials, food, fodder, medicines, and many other products. About half the tree cut every year is used as fuel for heating and cooking. Some of this tree cut is burnt directly as firewood, and part of it is converted into charcoal. Charcoal is widely used by urban inhabitants and some institutions and industries. The rapid depletion of forests is due to population increase, expansion of the settlements and agricultural activities, and increased demand for forest products. Lack of livelihood alternatives is also a major problem to rural life. What has government done to improve the situation? Could it be a case of finding new challenges, opportunities, such as promoting tree cultivation, or an advantage of promoting new initiatives by promoting them through government incentives?
For charcoal, it should be made cost effective so that it is affordable. But from what I've been observing, I want to take a radical stand which contradicts this. Instead of making it cost effective, we should have a fiscal component. Which fiscal component should increase taxes on the charcoal sellers, charcoal burners, on everybody, so that ultimately, in the medium, short term and long run, we have less dependence on the ecosystems. I want to give you a case scenario. Between 2007 and 2009, 1.5 million hectares of trees have been cut in Uganda. On an annual basis, we almost cut up 500,000 hectares of trees. Now, if you say you want to make it commercially cost effective, it is more or less like an incentive that they can cut. So that's why I'm saying the government now should come up, introduce more taxes. And then on the part of the government should now be tasked to subsidize other sources of energy which have less emissions or which are not so much disastrous or which do not have cosmic effects as much as when you depend on the biomass. That said, we shall go green.
Government incentives on other fuel sources. Apart from depletion of biomass, what are the dangers associated with using firewood?
It is attributed that biomass energy use is over 2 billion in terms of the population that uses biomass energy. And it is, according to International Energy Agency, it is said that by 2050, the energy needs will triple, especially with the biomass. And this has a great effect, especially to do with the deforestation and forest degradation in developing countries. Most of the people in developing countries depend on the biomass energy for all their domestic work, especially in areas where they have no access to grid for electricity. So the challenges that are likely to be associated with the use of biomass energy is that it will lead to deforestation, of which at the end of the day releases carbon into the atmosphere. And when this carbon is released into the atmosphere, it contributes to global emissions, which at the end leads to impacts of climate change. So that is what we have to address. And most of the developing countries, they don't see this as a priority based on the national circumstances. But energy needs to be addressed as a priority by either making it a priority at national level by subsidizing alternative sources of energy so that people can be able to access all the efficient, clean energy technologies like the use of solar, biogas that are renewable in nature so that they don't deplete the environment. And some of them, they are cost saving and they don't have negative impact to the environment.
New fuel technologies can be good if supply is always consistent. The challenges now are that there are issues of standardization that need to be addressed. For example, how do people access these new fuel technologies? Then how do we penetrate the mainstream market? Because for you to provide a market, you have to establish a product in the market so that people know you and begin to buy your product. Where are these briquettes sold? For example, if I go to Nakawa market, which stall do I go to get a briquette? Where can I get an energy saving stove? These are the issues I think that we could have solutions for here. Alternative fuel sources available, such as petroleum, gas, biogas, and hydroelectricity power, may be expensive for the majority to afford, but there could be issues of attitudes. Energy issues are a global concern. That's why there is need for advocacy for realization of results in improving the way we handle energy. There is need for more innovative rural energy solutions in poor communities. 2012 was marked as the Year for Sustainable Energy by the United Nations. Richard Kimbowa tells us the global perspectives of energy.
Globally, energy is a deficit for millions of people, in that few people in the world have modern access to modern forms of energy, which in a way is the source of poverty if you look at it in terms of livelihoods. So if people cannot afford to have modern forms of energy, then they cannot cook, their health conditions are not good, the children cannot go to school because the nutrition levels are low, they can't stay in school for long because they can't access studies that require energy at all. So it all rotates around energy, and it rotates energy, and also it affects their level of living, in other words. The other thing is that energy also is a major contributor to climate change, in the sense that when there's burning of fossil fuels or wood or anything, it releases carbon dioxide, and therefore the more we rely on some forms of energy, we are releasing a lot of carbon dioxide, and therefore the focus on climate change and energy becomes very important, and therefore the sort of interventions we need today that can ensure that we don't add more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere become very important. There's a lot of challenges depending on which countries. In Africa, for example, the huge challenge of energy is leading to huge deforestation, removal of not only trees but also other forms of vegetation, because people are now running away from firewood and charcoal because the cost is becoming high and high, and therefore they cannot sustain themselves on that, and therefore they're encroaching on even other vegetation, call it animal waste, which would have gone into the agriculture, fertilizer, or sort of replenishing the soils. They are encroaching on wetlands to get the papyrus and use them for cooking. They are getting the banana stems, dry them and using them to cook. And in some cases, people cannot even afford to get these products or materials, and therefore they miss their meals. And that also goes to the institutional level, at the level of institutions like health centers, where if energy in form of power or in forms of cooking cannot be availed, then the children who are in the hospitals, the mothers who are expectant in the hospitals cannot be catered for very well, and therefore it sort of affects the level of service they get, and therefore probably it's one of the causes of high rate of mortality for mothers and children in those that cannot afford to stay, that cannot be catered for because of lack of energy. In some countries, of course, there's excess on the other side, where others are consuming quite a lot of energy in form of, they have the houses are well equipped with fridges and the lights are on and everything. And then, so there's a discrepancy in terms of the world where there's excess in one side of the US and North America. And then you have a huge deficit in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. So this is the world we're living in, of excess and excessiveness, and then there's a deficit on one side.